Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on what time you're watching this. My name's Connor from 905 Review. You're catching our series Give This a Spin, where I recommend you guys some of my favorite albums. Today we're taking a look at the folksy Harvest from legendary singer-songwriter Neil Young. Through Neil Young's adolescence, his family had moved a couple times around southern Ontario. Yet when his folks split, he opted to join his mother west to Winnipeg. It was there that he would begin his musical career and meet the likes of other legendary artists such as Joni Mitchell and Stephen Stills. As his musical career began to gain traction in the 60s, he joined a group in Toronto that actually included a young Rick James, who was in the country to avoid being drafted. The group would fall apart when US authorities did eventually find him, but Neil Young and the group's bassist Bruce Palmer elected they would move south to Los Angeles. There they actually ran into Stephen Stills, and along with Richie Furay and Dewey Martin, would form the group Buffalo Springfield. Though this group only lasted a couple years, their impact on country and folk rock was immense. This was followed up by Neil releasing his first two solo albums, as well as joining a supergroup of Stephen Stills, David Crosby, and Graham Nash. After an album with CSNY and another solo one in 1970, Neil Young's 1971 tour was much anticipated. While he was in Nashville for his appearance on the Johnny Cash Show, he opted to dedicate some time to the studio to record the songs he had been coming up with along the way, giving way to 1972's Harvest. The album opens off with a soft ballad, Out on the Weekend. The drums and guitar set this real easy mood, maybe one to reminisce to, as the harmonica just sings its song. In the first verse, we hear him singing about his move to Los Angeles. And to me, the chorus is him saying how down and alone he feels, but at least it's a living since people want to hear his story and his song.
See the lonely boy out on the weekend, trying to make it pay.
This is then followed by the slow yet cheery title track.
Did she wake you up to tell you that it was only a change of plan?
The lyrics are fairly vague, describing some sort of relationship, but I do love the third verse and trying to find that perfect balance with someone. After this, we change things up quite a bit with A Man Needs a Maid. It's this emotional piano ballad.
There's a shadow running through my days, like a beggar going from door to door.
When, out of nowhere during the chorus, an orchestra joins in.
A man needs a maid.
The song did get him a bit of heat. A decent amount of people thought he was saying he just wants a gal to come over, take care of him, take care of his house, then leave because that's all women are good for. And I mean, those are some pretty small hoops you're jumping through to get to that conclusion. The more accepted interpretation, as per Young's character, is that he was feeling lonely and wanted some intimacy, but at the same time he had these big fears of being really hurt by how a relationship can go. So having a maid is actually a pretty good metaphor for that, as she comes, does her job, and then leaves. The third verse also mentions him falling in love with an actress who he later revealed to be Carrie Snodgrass, and who he also actually has a son with. I don't mind the symphonic element of the song, but it is quite a departure from the folky sound I associate with the album. The fourth track now, and one of Neil's classic hits, we have Heart of Gold. You can never stop improving. So Neil keeps searching until he's found that heart of gold. And the song was big. Topped the Canadian charts, and is his only solo song to ever reach #1 on the American charts. It's even been covered by Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash. Not Bob Dylan, though. He hated it. He thought it sounded too much like Bob Dylan.
Keep me searching for a heart of gold.
While studying for this review, I also found out that CBC ranked the 50 greatest Canadian songs of all time. And they have Heart of Gold at #3, which is a pretty high spot. But, they got If I Had $1 Million by Bare Naked Ladies at #2. Like, Heart of Gold is a classic. I wouldn't personally put it as high as #3. But I certainly wouldn't put it under Bare Naked Ladies If I Had $1 Million. And closing the first side of Harvest, we have Are You Ready for the Country? It is an absolutely fun song. Folkish while still being bluesy, and the guitar sound just makes everything come together so nicely.
Are you ready for the country? Because it's time.
One thing I've read about Neil Young around the time of the making of this album is he felt like he was at a crossroads. He had some commercial and critical success with previous albums and singles like Heart of Gold. However, he was more interested in the rougher path. And that's what this song makes me think of, as it presents multiple different options. In it, he's lefting and righting. Whatever that actually means, I'm not certain. I tried looking it up to see if it was just some sort of old-timey saying, but all I got was left versus right in a political sense. So, I mean, maybe he's undecided. He also says that the preacher told him that God is on his side. Meanwhile, the hangman said it's time to die. Picking up the second side of the album is another classic hit, Old Man. It's a nice soft country tune with a bit of banjo just for that extra twang.
Old man, take a look at my life. I'm a lot like you.
The song is for the old man who tended to the ranch that Neil purchased around the time, and how, while they did have their differences, him being an elder caretaker and Young being his 24-year-old traveling musician, they had something in common. They both just wanted a nice gal to come home to. Well, I mean, the ranch worker already had one. He was married, but this is then followed by the 7th track, There's a World. You're you, right? Matter of fact, you're the only you. You dictate your life. Maybe not with absolute control. There's surely some circumstances you'll have to maneuver around, but for the most part, you lead the way. And there's so many possibilities of things you can do, places you can go. It's just a matter of getting out there. This aura of how massive and full of wonder the world is, with almost an overwhelming amount of possibilities, is captured in the song right from the beginning with the use of the orchestra.
We are leaving.
Coming in next is the 8th track, Alabama. It opens with this killer guitar tone that easily makes this one of my favorites on the album.
Oh, Alabama.
Neil Young had already written the track Southern Man off his 1970 solo album After the Gold Rush, about the incredible racial disparity in the southern United States. And here he is doubling down on it. Just the shame and distaste of seeing how one person can treat another just for looking a little different. Southern rock band Lynyrd Skynyrd would of course fire back with their own song Sweet Home Alabama in 1974, and they're saying, don't take this out on the whole population. We didn't vote George Wallace in. And decades later, Neil agreed. He was trying to bring forth attention to the ongoing discrimination. However, his song was in a way where it could have been misconstrued to be blaming an entire state or region. This is then followed by another popular track, The Needle and the Damage Done. So Danny Whitten was a guitarist of Crazy Horse, a backing band Neil Young established for himself, and who played with him on his albums Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere and After the Gold Rush. At some point during the After the Gold Rush sessions, Neil Young dismissed the group, partly because Whitten was starting to fall off from the drugs he was on, namely heroin, which inspired him to write this song.
I love you, baby, can I have some more? Ooh, the damage done.
He would even be kicked out of Crazy Horse, who began making their own songs in Neil Young's absence, and didn't make the cut when Neil offered him a role supporting him for his 1971 tour. The same night Neil sent Whitten home, he died of an overdose of diazepam and alcohol. Heavy stuff. Also, you can't even really tell until the end, but the version on the album is a live recording from one of the shows he was playing on the tour that had him end up in Nashville in the first place. And closing the album, we have Words Between the Lines of Age. It's another one of few on here that feature that gritty guitar sound I love, yet it's paired with a nice piano melody.
They're bringing me presents and saying hello, singing words.
The song is also certainly the longest at over 6.5 minutes. Not actually being very folk, this sounds quite like something that actually could have been on Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere. This notion helped only more by the 2 guitar solos in it. There aren't really any wild variants of Harvest to be aware of. It's been put out on all sorts of different vinyl thicknesses and disc types to try to get the superior sound. The only edition that really caught my eye was the 1978 Dutch release that came out on a cream-colored vinyl. Not much unlike some other albums I've recently covered. I was quite surprised to find out that this album didn't fare too well critically. A lot of critics just bashed it for Neil rehashing old ideas, sounding the same as stuff he's already put out, only inferior this time around. And again, this is contrasted by recent retrospective reviews that have been very positive on it. It did also top the charts of 7 countries, apparently being the first Canadian album to ever top the Billboard, and is certified triple platinum in the UK for 900,000 album sales, and 4 times platinum in the US for 4 million album sales. One great thing about the vinyl of this album is I found it helped the drums really stand out. Well, I mean, you know me and drums. But at the same time, not overwhelmingly so. They're still in their supportive role, yet they're noticeable enough to appreciate, yet not take away too much from the songs. Also, I already gave them some love, but you cannot go wrong with the guitars on both Are You Ready for the Country and Alabama. Harvest features 3 of Neil Young's best known songs, at least up here, in Heart of Gold, Old Man, and The Needle and the Damage Done, as well as containing a couple of my own personal favorites of his. With that being said, I'm going to stamp Harvest with an A grading, but admittedly it wasn't easy. For a while I considered this my favorite solo album of his, yet while listening to it through and studying it more for this review, I do think my view of it's actually diminished a little bit. I mean, it's close. I'd still give it an A, but it's not as secure as I might have previously thought. And I think that's because the album suffers from a bit of an identity crisis. I mean, the name Harvest, the nice, light, soft color scheme, the rough texture of it. I don't know how you describe a texture. It's like construction paper almost. It's not slick, we'll say that. um, I don't mind the rougher guitar sounds in it. It adds a little bit of variety, right? But the two songs with the London Symphony Orchestra stand out quite a bit. And then even if I had to guess what album the track Words was from, if I weren't already so familiar with this, I really don't think I'd expect it to be on this one. But those have been my thoughts on Harvest by Neil Young. Let me know yours. And as always, I appreciate hosting you. But, real quick before we take off, what did you think of this Neil Young solo album, Harvest? Did I rate it too high? Did I rate it too low? Let me know your thoughts on the album, on the video, and I hope to see you again soon. Well, whenever you're free,